I'm looking forward to talking to you today about a topic that is very, very dear to my heart and always has been. It's also the reason why I founded the consultancy company Sustainable Links, and that's stakeholder engagement, and especially meaningful stakeholder engagement. Please, let me start by talking about where I first experienced the importance of proactive engagement in the tourism industry, in the tourism sector. And that was now more than 10 years ago when we did the first ever human rights impact assessment in the tourism sector. And back then, that was in Kenya. And what I realized what the team realized when we did this assessment is that there are so many issues that we wouldn't have found without the direct engagement. So all the reports, all the audits that have been done previously, they wouldn't have pointed us to the actual things that are going on in the field, or that the communities face, or that the workers face in the hotels. For example, we uncovered that for the Maasai communities, that there are tour guides that are actually taking the money that is destined for the communities, for community visits. They're taking it away from them at the end of the tour and taking it back into their own pockets. And that is an issue that we would have never uncovered through other means than directly engaging with people in the country. And not only in my own experience, this is now a common truth, but also in the frameworks related to human rights due diligence. So all of the major documents and also the laws related to human rights due diligence mention meaningful stakeholder engagement as being at the core of what makes human rights due diligence for companies. And even the German law, it's not very loud on this aspect, but it talks about due consideration of the interests of affected workers in the supply chain, and other stakeholders. And for me, in an ideal world, stakeholder engagement really informs all of the elements that make up human rights due diligence process. So you would involve stakeholders in the policy commitment, in the development of that. We have just heard it also on the panel, in the risk analysis, in the measures, but of course also in how you respond to how to respond to risks, and in how you manage grievances and address grievances. And as we have heard, there's a lot of question marks around what is meaningful in meaningful stakeholder engagement. So last year, we started to develop for the UN Global Compact Network in Germany a document that kind of demystifies this idea of what makes meaningful stakeholder engagement. And it's this guidance document that you can see here and that you can find online, which highlights key success factors of what makes meaningful engagement, and focuses in that especially on more vulnerable rights holders. So we're not talking so much about how to engage powerful stakeholders, how to engage big NGOs, but really the affected communities, the workers, that lies at the heart of that document. And we developed that based on our own experience in, for example, human rights impact assessment and other processes, due diligence processes, but also through engagement with practitioners in that field, both from the civil society, but also from businesses that have a lot of experience in stakeholder engagement processes. So what are the 5 key insights that we have identified? Please. You can see them here on the slide. Stakeholder engagement is meaningful when it is based on trust, when it is fit for purpose, when it's rights-based, characterized by co-ownership, and sensitive to context. So these are the 5 insights we have highlighted, and I want briefly go into each and give you a flavor. And it was interesting to see that some of them have already been picked up on the panel before. So let's start with the first three. Based on trust is, for example, something that was mentioned already in the discussion. And we have found that this was really something that all experts mentioned in all of the interviews. So it's really the underlying topic of meaningful engagement. And trust relates to transparency in many cases, the transparency of the process of engagement, but also of the potentially available outcomes of the engagement. And trust is also related to time, so that companies don't perceive engagement as a tick box exercise, but really take the time that is needed to build trust and to maintain trust over time. And it's related to reliable and predictable behavior, so that we jointly develop the rules of the engagement, but also stick to these rules over the engagement process. And it requires a commitment to act on behalf of the company in many cases, so that it's not just engagement for the sake of engagement, but can lead to real outcomes. The second element, fit for purpose, relates to engagement having a clear, defined objective. And as I said, not being just for the sake of engagement, of having a nice document saying I consulted this group, but to really have a defined objective to reach. And again, in an ideal world, that is related to the company's due diligence strategies, so that the engagement happens in relation to the rights that are most at risk and the prioritized issues of the business. And it also requires a willingness to really change and adapt and stick to that and redefine that purpose over time. And then the third principle relates to rights-based, which means that human rights are really the compass of the engagement, that the companies focus on power imbalances and how they can be addressed, because it's obvious that when you consult a community, there's an extreme power imbalance. So that needs to be addressed. And it might also, in some cases, mean that you don't engage, because your engagement might put people at so much risk that it's not helping them or supporting their realization of human rights. And we have the panel principles that come from human rights as an orientation to what means the human rights-based approach, relating to participation, accountability, non-discrimination, empowerment, and legality. The more mindset-related insights, engagement is meaningful when it's characterized by co-ownership. And that means that we really need open communication and knowledge sharing within the engagement process. And the focus should be on the process and not on achieving a certain desired outcome. So the process can lead to a completely different outcome than what we have desired in the beginning, but it's the process that counts. And it also means acknowledging everyone's contribution, and that might require open discussion about costs, for example, and who is able to bring what into the mix and needs support in the process. And what we realized is that successful engagement processes often have skillful facilitation to achieve that creation, that co-creation. So it's not facilitated by one or the other stakeholder, but there's a third party that is a bit more neutral and can kind of facilitate that process. And then the final fifth element is sensitive to context. And that means that we really need to understand the context we are engaging in and what is required and what approach we need for this context. And that requires a proper stakeholder analysis, really understand who's out there in the landscape, who are the different groups that could be involved. And it means also engaging those who are against our project, not only the ones that kind of support us, but also those that are against. And it means really understanding the political, legal, social, economic context of our project, for example. And this is especially important in contexts of where we require heightened due diligence, contexts of conflict or post-conflict countries, that we really need to understand the context before we start engaging. And that requires, of course, certain skills that need to be brought into the engagement process. So that was my quick run through the 5 elements. There's so much more that could be said about that. And as we go into the workshops and the discussions, I just want to highlight what I think is important, or what I would like to see through more meaningful engagement. Eva, thank you. I hope that meaningful engagement can encourage a shift on different levels. Hopefully, it helps us to move from a more transactional world to a world where we can together really enable sustainable solutions, really be transformative. It hopefully can get us from a world of firefighting, where we only respond to stakeholder concerns when they are already protesting or when there's a media article, to a world of addressing the sources of conflict before they escalate, and using engagement as a source to prevent conflict and prevent tension. Hopefully, we can move from compliance orientation, where we look at what's required in the law and then we do only that, to a world where we recognize that there's an intrinsic value in a well-resourced engagement process, and that can really help us do business better, and it helps the communities thrive. And we can hopefully move from a hierarchic, dynamic, very much focused on power, to a truly co-designed and collaborative, joint learning experience. Yeah, and I would love to, kind of encourage you to experiment and get on this journey. And look forward to talking more about this in the workshop.